Okay, hello everyone. Let us just quickly revise what we discussed in the last lecture, then we'll move forward in today's content. So, in the last lecture, we discussed few properties about fluids, which includes density, mass density, weight density, specific volume, specific gravity, viscosity, and I think surface tension we have also discussed in the last class. So we discussed about these properties. We discussed quite a few numerical also and their application, like what could be the application of specific gravity or what could be the specific application of density that we discussed about viscosity, Newton's law of viscosity. So all of these properties are very critical in terms whenever we talk about the designing any system which deals with fluid mechanics or the principles of the fluid mechanics. So I hope you have understood all of those properties, and let us move forward with today's content. So before moving to the today's content, I just want to draw your attention because the last topic we discovered was we covered was surface tension. So in surface tension, I have told you surface tension is basically the molecules, the fluid molecules on the free surface are, are under you know, are in a tensile condition or are under a tension position because of the unbalanced intermolecular forces for the molecules present on the free surface, due to which the upper membrane or the free surface will act as a stressed membrane, right? And because of which surface tension develop. A surface tension, I have told you, it's kind of a force per unit length, which is denoted by sigma. So basic as a unit of for surface tension is Newton per meter also. And then we discussed about the surface tension in a liquid droplet and on a hollow bubble. Fine. So we derived a relation for the pressure intensity of pressure for liquid droplets and for a hollow bubble. Okay. For liquid droplet, it was P is equals to 4 sigma by d, and for hollow bubble it was P is equals to 8 sigma by d, where P is the pressure, sigma was surface tension, and d was the diameter of the bubble or the, you can say, droplet. Okay. So based on those concepts, let us try to solve one numerical problem here. You can see that the surface tension of water in contact with the air. So again, water, so we can talk about it's a case similar to a liquid droplet. Fine. So surface tension of water in contact with air, so this is the temperature, is 0.0725. So surface tension sigma value is given to us here, and the pressure inside the droplet of Cp is given, pressure inside the droplet, and you can verify from the unit also. Unit is Newton per centimeter square, so it's a unit of pressure. Again, the pressure inside the droplet is 0.02 Newton per centimeter square. So since it's a centimeter square, so we'll convert it into meter square because the SI unit of pressure will be Newton per meter square or pascals. Fine. So we'll do it in a later stage. Now calculate the diameter of the droplet. Now it's asking ki based upon the pressure and surface tension, what could be the diameter of the droplet. So we are going to use that relation which we discussed in the last class for the liquid droplet. P is equals to 4 sigma by d. So this relation is mentioned over here also. So let us just first see what quantities are given to us. Sigma is given to us directly, surface tension. Pressure is given in terms of Newton per centimeter square. So if you convert centimeter square into meter square, you just need to multiply. See, centimeter square was in on the denominator, so it will come over here. Fine. So it will become 10 to the power 4. Okay, 0.02 into 10 to the power 4 Newton per meter square. That is the pressure. By substituting all those values here, P and sigma, you can easily calculate the diameter here. It will be nearly 1.45 millimeters. Okay, so this was the simple question. Let's see one more question here. Surface tension of a soap bubble. Now this, in this case, it is a soap bubble. Soap bubble is mostly a hollow bubble. There is no liquid filled inside the soap bubble. So this would be a case of a hollow bubble. Fine. Surface tension of a hollow bubble of diameter. So diameter is given 40 mm in this case. But mm, so we can convert mm into its SI unit, meters. Okay. And pressure is also given. So it's asking us to find the surface tension, pressure, and diameter is given to us. So again, we will use. Okay, as we were discussing, this is a soap bubble. So soap bubble, it's kind of a hollow bubble. Here for hollow bubble, we have the relation for surface tension in a hollow bubble, that will be P is equals to 8 sigma by d. So what quantities are given to us in this problem? Again, whenever we solve a problem, we'll first make a list of whatever the quantity is given to us. So it will be easier for us to identify which quantities are required to be calculated and what relations we have to calculate them. Okay. So the first diameter is given to us. So diameter is given in terms of mm. So we'll convert it into its SI unit. So in terms of meter, this is the value. And then the pressure is given Newton per meter squared. So it's a SI unit already. So we need not to convert it. So pressure is equals to 2.5 Newton per meter square. Now we have P and D. We can easily calculate sigma. Just substitute the value and calculate sigma. Now whatever the value of sigma will come, you know the units of sigma is Newton meter. So obviously the unit will be Newton meter here. Now moving to the next property of the fluid, that is capillarity. So capillarity, you need to understand capillarity, and before explaining the definition or before going to the definition of capillarity, I want to draw your attention towards some natural phenomena. You know that when we plant trees, okay, so you know the basically the trees will get nutrients or water from ground, okay. So trees have channels through which they will, you know, they take water and minerals from the ground. So the water will be absorbed, or where water will be taken from ground to the top of the tree by some action. So that action is called as a capillarity action, because trees have very narrow, very thin tubular type of networks through which they will absorb the water from ground to the top of the tree. So capillarity, again, it's a natural phenomena where the water or any liquid is rising in a natural or in a very narrow thin duct or tube, like in case of trees, okay. Or whatever, you will suppose you spill ink on a cotton. So what will happen, cotton have very micro channels, microfibers. So the ink will be, you can say, absorbed in those microfibers through the capillarity action, right? So these are certain you can say natural phenomena in which we will see capillarity action. So capillarity action, how we can define capillarity basically it's a phenomena, it's a, you can say, occurrence which happens through which the liquid may rise, or sometimes liquid may fall also, right? So phenomena where the liquid may rise or fall in a very small tube, okay, with reference to a general level of the liquid, of the liquid, okay. So that rise or fall could be vertically. Okay, vertically liquid can rise, or vertically liquid can fall. Like in this case, you can see both the figures are given. This is an example of rise of water in the tube, not water. This is example of rise of water in a not water, rise of liquid in a tube, and this is example of rise of fall of liquid in a tube, right? So you can say this is the general level here. This is the general level of water in the, you can say, container. And when you insert a tube, when you insert a very small tube in this particular fluid tank, fine. So the fluid will rise in the tube, fine. So this rise of the fuel in the tank is called as capillarity rise, okay. But in the same case, let's say this is the general level of the liquid. Let's say liquid in this case is mercury. So mercury has a special phenomena where it will show capillarity fall. That is why it is written mercury. So this is the general level of mercury. Now when you insert a tube in this container, what will happen? The mercury will fall from the general level, fine, in the tube. So this fall of mercury in the tube from the general level is called as capillarity fall or capillarity depression also, fine. So these two phenomena are there. This is capillarity rise and this is capillarity fall. Fine. So this is about the definition. That's how you define capillarity. But the question is, why does happen? Why does a liquid rise in a tube, or why does a liquid falls in a tube when you insert a very small tube? So for to explain this concept, I want you to know there are two types of forces, cohesive forces and adhesive forces. Okay. Now, in case of capillarity rise, if I want to explain capillarity rise, we will discuss about cohesive and adhesive forces between the, see, cohesive forces will be the forces between the like molecules. Like molecules means the forces between the fluid particles. Okay, let's say there are a large number of fluid particles. Whatever the forces between the liquid particles, that will be cohesive forces. And forces between liquid and solid particle, like solid here will be the wall of glass, okay, wall of the tube, that will be let's say glass. So the force between the fluid particle and the glass wall, okay, the force between these two unlike entities, that is called as adhesive forces, fine. So what happens in case of capillarity rise? Fine, when we insert the tube, let's say there is a particular kind of a liquid. In case of a liquid, let's say water. So water has a tendency, when you insert a very small tube, in case of a water tank, fine. So water has, you can say, significantly higher adhesive forces than cohesive forces. That means what I want to say is, uh, the effect of adhesive forces will be higher in case of water as compared to cohesive forces. So what will happen? So whatever the fluid particles available here, they will rush towards the surface of the glass. Okay, I have shown it with the help of arrow also. So this water particles, these fluid particles, since the adhesive forces are greater, fine. So this fluid particles will rush towards the glass surface to get stick to the glass surface, fine. And then these fluid particles will keep on rising on the glass. Okay, up to how much value they will keep on rising? Okay, until and unless this force is balanced by the weight of the glass in the weight of the water in the glass tube, fine. So if the weight of the water in the glass tube is very high, okay, in that case the further rise of the water will be stopped, fine. So due to adhesive forces, the liquid molecules will try to stick to the glass surface, therefore it will rise in the glass tube. So that is the reason of capillarity rise, because the adhesive forces are more significant, more dominating as compared to cohesive forces. But what happens in case of capillarity fall or depression? Let's say in case of mercury, mercury has a tendency of capillary fall. Why? Because in case of mercury, cohesive forces are great and adhesive forces are not very significant. So cohesive forces will be dominating and adhesive forces are not dominating. So in that case, when you insert a tube here, since the cohesive forces are higher, so liquid molecules will try to remain in contact with each other. So they will come closer to each other. They will try to stick together. Fine. So they will try to move away from the glass. Okay. So the fluid molecules or the mercury molecules will try to move away from the glass, and hence there will be a depression. There will be a fall in the glass tube whenever the tube is inserted in a mercury tube. Right? So you can clearly see there is a capillarity fall in this particular case. So I have explained the phenomena, the reason why there is a capillarity rise and why there is a capillarity fall for this particular case. Okay. You can also see that whenever there is a capillarity rise or capillarity fall, it will form a curved surface. It can form, it's not mandatory, it can form a curved surface at the free surface. So this is a free surface. Free surface is always the interface between the gas and the, you can say, air and the liquid, fine. So this free surface could be curved also. Curved, that means this, suppose if you extend this curve here in this way, fine. So it will make theta angle with the glass surface, fine. So this is making theta angle with the glass surface. Here also it is shown. So free surface, if you extend the curvature of the free surface, it is making angle theta with the glass. Okay. So theta angle is made with respect to glass. Here you can see theta with respect to glass. Okay. So take care of this thing, and this curvature of the liquid in the glass is also called as meniscus. Okay, curvature I can show you in the next slide. You can see the liquid is, if you extend the curve, it is making like this, and there is a theta form, theta between the glass surface and this curvature of the liquid. So this angle is called as theta, and this curvature is called as meniscus here, right? So when there is a curvature here, this free surface always have a sigma surface tension. So surface tension, you can see it is at a certain angle theta with respect to glass. So this surface tension can have two components, sigma cos theta and sigma sin theta. So with, in the vertical direction it will be sigma cos theta, and in horizontal direction it will be sigma sin theta. Okay, I hope you can easily make the components, right? So this will be sigma cos theta over here. Okay, and whatever the weight, whatever the amount of fluid rise in this tube, so its weight will be acting downward. So weight is acting downward, weight of the water in the tube, it is acting downward. So sigma cos theta, it's a kind of a force which is moving, which is acting upwards, and weight of the water in the tube acting downwards. So if I want to sustain, if I want to maintain this capillarity in the tube, these two forces should be balanced. Okay, so that's what we will try to do in the, to derive the expression of, you can say, height of rise of water in the tube. To derive the expression for height of the rise of water in tank, we'll try to derive a condition, fine. So in this condition, these two forces should be balanced. Okay, vertically these two forces should be balanced here. So that's what we are doing here. Okay, now before that we'll try to calculate what is the volume, what is the volume of or what is the weight of water in the tube. So what is the weight of the water in the tube? So I can say weight can be calculated with the help of, if you uh, multiply density into volume, you will get mass. Okay, density into volume, that will be mass. And if you multiply with g, so that will become weight, because m into g is weight, right? So that's what have been done here also, to calculate the weight of the liquid in the tube. Fine, what's had been done? Density, now area into h. Area of the tube means cross section area of the tube, cross section area of the tube into h. So that will be the volume of water in the tube. Okay, so volume of water in the tube is area of the tube into h. So that is the volume. Volume into density is mass, into g is weight. So this is the weight of the water in the tube. Okay, so area, cross section area of the tube will be pi by 4 d square, because cross section is circular. Fine, and d is the you can say diameter of the tube, small d. So pi by 4 d square is the cross section area into h, that will be volume. Volume into density, mass. Mass into g is weight. Fine. So this is the weight of the water. This is one force, weight of the water in the tube. Now another force is sigma cos theta. You know, sigma is not force, it is force per unit length. So we need to multiply with length also. Now length of the tube will be, that's a cross section of the tube. Cross section of the tube will be circumference. Fine. So sigma into circumference will be the force, but not entire surface tension is acting vertically. Only the cos theta component. Fine. So sigma into circumference into cos theta, sigma cos theta into circumference. So that will be the force in the upward direction. Circumference is pi into d. So sigma pi d cos theta. So both, see, this is the upward force, this is downward force. This is downward force and this is upward force. We will balance them. So if you balance both of them, and you can simplify this expression for h. So if you simplify this expression for h, you will get 4 sigma cos theta by rho gd. Fine. So this is the expression of height of capillarity rise in the tube. H is equals to 4 sigma cos theta by rho gd. You need to remember this thing. Fine. So height of capillarity rise will be 4 sigma cos theta by rho gd. Now this theta may vary. Theta may vary from 0 to whatever the value is given in the problem. But for few cases you need to remember the value of theta, like in case of water. In case of water, theta is almost 0. Theta you need to take 0 in case of water. So whenever you have given in the problem, you have given that water is there, so we will take cos theta to be 0, and if you put theta to be 0, cos theta is 1. So in that case expression will be 4 sigma by rho gd. Getting it? Okay. And similarly you can calculate for expression for capillary fall also. So in that case, in case of fall, what we will do, sigma cos theta will be acting downwards. Okay, and water weight, I'll put it into upward direction. Fine. So in that case again, if you sorry, sigma cos theta and water weight will be downwards. So in that case again, if you balance the forces, you will get the same expression in case of capillarity fall also. For capillarity fall we are getting the same expression. So I have not gone into the derivation of the capillarity fall. You can refer books, and you will get the same expression. Fine. But in case of capillarity fall, as I have told you in the previous slide also, that capillarity fall is basically observed with mercury. So whenever we have a case of mercury, the value of theta will be 130 degree, 130. So you need to remember this also, like for water theta is 0 and for mercury theta is 130. So just two values we need to remember. Okay. Now let's say we have one problem based on capillarity phenomena also. Let's try to solve this type of question. Now we need to calculate the capillarity rise in a glass tube of 2.5 millimeters. See, the diameter of the tube is given 2.5 millimeter. It is immersed vertically. Again, two cases are given. If the tube is immersed in water or mercury. You know, for water, there will be rise of water in the tube, and for mercury there will be fall of water in the tube, fall of mercury in the tube. You know, because of the cohesive and adhesive forces. Fine. So there will be upper rise and downward fall. Fine. Now surface tension is given to us in this case. Okay, what for water, surface tension for water is given, and surface tension for mercury is given. Okay, and specific gravity of the mercury is given. Why the specific gravity of the mercury is given? Because in the expression we need to calculate density also, and density can be easily calculated with specific gravity. We have seen in the last class relation between specific gravity and density, so we'll see that. And angle of contact for mercury, angle of contact theta is also given 130 degree. I have told you in the previous slide, you need to remember. So it is 130 degree. Fine. Now, once you read the question, let us try to make the list of whatever the given parameters are there. So in the very first line, the diameter is given in mm, so we'll convert it into meters. Okay. In second line, sigma for water, surface tension for water, surface tension for mercury, both are given. In third line, specific gravity of mercury is given, fine, and theta is given, fine. So theta is also given 130 degree for mercury, theta for mercury, fine. Now density of mercury, you know, specific gravity is equals to density of mercury divided by density of water, fine. So density of mercury will be specific gravity into density of water. So specific gravity of mercury into density of water, that will be the density of mercury. This is the density of mercury. Okay. Now in case of water, if you know the formula is H equal to 4 sigma cos theta by rho GD. Okay, 4 sigma cos theta by rho GD. But water, I have told you, for water theta is 0. So cos theta is 0. Cos 0 means 1. So that quantity has not been written here. Cos 0 is 1. So directly it will become 4 sigma by rho GD. Okay, in case of water only. So substituted all the values and calculated that height of you can say capillarity rise will be 1.18 centimeter, fine, in the tube. Now for mercury, theta is given 130 degree, okay, and the expression, general expression is 4 sigma cos theta by rho gt. There will be fall, okay. So let's see how we can identify the fall. If you substitute all the values here, and you will get the value of h to be minus 0.4. Now what does this minus represents? This minus represents that there will be negative sign, indicates that there will be fall in the capillary tube, right? So there will be fall in the capillary tube. So therefore in mercury we have discussed that there should be a fall, so that has been represented in the numbers also. You will get answer in negative, okay, because cos of 130 is some negative value, right? So this kind of question you may get in for capillarity. I hope you got it. Now the next property is vapor pressure and cavitation. So vapor pressure and cavitation, let's try to understand vapor pressure first. Okay, if we need to, you can say, define vapor pressure. Vapor pressure is basically the pressure exerted by the air on the free surface of the liquid. On the free surface of the liquid, whatever the pressure applied by the air or the gas above the free surface, that is called as vapor pressure. Let's say if this is the free surface, now whatever the force exerted by the air or the neighboring gas on this free surface, that the pressure due to that force is called as vapor pressure, right? So if we need to explain vapor pressure, what we can do is we can consider, you can say, closed vessel. Closed vessel, if you consider, let's say you have filled some liquid in that closed vessel at normal temperature of 20 degrees Celsius and atmospheric pressure. Now in that closed vessel, the vessel is not completely filled, it is partially filled, fine. So when you start you can say heating that liquid, let's say that liquid is water. So if you start heating that water at 100 up to 100 degrees Celsius, so what will happen? The water will start boiling, and this that liquid will convert into vapors, fine. So vapor will leave the surface of water and it will accumulate between the free surface and the, you can say, top of the vessel, okay, at the top of the vessel. Fine. So there will be more vapors accumulated at the top of the free surface, fine. Those vapors will exert force. Those vapor molecules will be accumulated, here you can read it also, those vapor molecules will be accumulated in the space between free surface and the top of the vessel, fine. So these vapors exert pressure on the liquid surface. So these vapors will exert some pressure on the liquid surface. That pressure is called as vapor pressure. Initially I have told you it is the pressure exerted by the vapor on the free surface, that is vapor pressure. So that is what defined also here. And so these vapors will exert some pressure on the free surface of the liquid. That pressure is called as vapor pressure. Okay. Now what we did in this particular case is, at atmospheric pressure, to increase the vapor pressure, what we did, what to achieve the vapor pressure, what we did, we increase the temperature. Fine. You can do the other way also. Other way, like let's say if you again consider a vessel, a closed vessel at 20 degrees Celsius and atmospheric pressure, fine, and the vessel is, let's say, partially filled, not completely filled, fine. Now in this case, instead of increasing temperature, what we will do, we will try to decrease the pressure, fine. So what will happen if the pressure is reduced? Now temperature is still constant, 20 degrees Celsius. If you try to reduce pressure below the atmospheric pressure, sub-atmospheric pressure, fine. Atmospheric pressure, you know, it is somewhere around 1 bars. So if you try to reduce the atmospheric pressure, let's say by the help of some vacuum cleaner, vacuum creating devices, okay. So if you try to create a vacuum in that particular vessel, what will happen? The pressure will keep on decreasing, and because of which what will happen? So you will keep on decreasing the pressure, fine. So what will happen here? You can see it will become equal. At some point of time, if you keep on reducing the pressure inside the vessel will become equal to vapor pressure at 20 degrees Celsius. So whatever the value of vapor pressure at 20 degrees Celsius, that will become equal, right? So in that case, what will happen? Again, the liquid will start vaporizing, right? So liquid will start vaporizing. That means what you have done by reducing the pressure, you have decreased the boiling point also, right? You know that if you go on mountains, the boiling point is less, right? So that is what we have done also. In on mountains, the pressure are low. Here also we have reduced the pressure. So when you have reduced the pressure, water starts boiling at 20 degrees Celsius also, right? So that means the there is a formation of vapor, and they will exert forces or pressure on the free surface. Okay, so both the ways can be operated. Either you can increase the temperature, or you can decrease the pressure to reach the vapor pressure. Okay, so that is what we are discussed in this particular point. Next is cavitation. So cavitation is basically it's a phenomena, and which is not you can say a desirable phenomena. This is undesirable phenomena which happens in many uh, hydraulic or fluid machineries. Fine. Basically, cavitation occurs whenever the pressure in the fluid machinery is decreased to vapor pressure. If the pressure inside the fluid machinery is decreased to vapor pressure, and we know at vapor pressure there will be formation of vapors, and the water will convert into vapor. Fine. So what will happen if inside the fluid machinery, if the pressure is reached to vapor pressure, what will happen? Water will start making vapors, like it will start making bubbles also inside the whenever the water boils, whenever the liquid boils, there is a formation of bubbles, right? So it will start making bubbles. Now those bubbles, if those bubbles are hitting the surface, solid surface at high velocity, those bubbles will burst on the solid surface. So bursting of those high velocity bubbles on the surface will cause erosion of the solid particles. So those solid particles will be removed due to bursting of the bubbles, erosion, and because of which there will be pitting, there will be depression created on the solid surface, which will, you can say, which will reduce the strength of the surface. So, and it may make small holes, small cavities on the solid surface. That formation of cavity due to bursting of bubbles, which which is formed due to pressure reduced to the vapor pressure of the within the system. Fine. So that is called as cavitation. Okay, in many turbines, in pumps, you may see the turbine blades or pump blades can develop cavities after a longer use, right? Because the pressure inside the turbine of the pump may reduce at the inlet of the pump, and at the outlet of the turbine, pressure may reduce below the vapor pressure, and there boiling of water may start occurs, and due to boiling, bubble formation occurs, and bubble may cause erosion on the surface of the blades. Okay? So that is called as cavitation. So I hope the cavitation phenomenon is clear to you. Now, in the next slide, see, we have completely discussed most of the very, you can say, popular properties for the fluids. Fine. So that was the end of properties for the fluid. In this particular slide, we will try to discuss different types of fluids also. Again, it's an important concept in terms of exams also. A lot of questions could be asked here. Fine. So if we discuss fluids, different types of fluids, if you may remember that we discussed about Newton's law of viscosity. Newton's law of viscosity states that the shear stress, whenever the fluid flows, the shear stress between the layer of the fluid particles or fluid layers, when is directly proportional to the rate of shear strain. Right? So whenever we are talking about all the fluids which are following Newton's law of viscosity, those fluids are called as Newtonian fluid. The fluids which follow this principle, Newton's law, and those fluids are called as Newtonian fluids. Fine. So if you try to draw a shear stress and velocity gradient means rate of shear strain. Rate of shear strain, we saw that tau is directly proportional to du by dy. So du by dy was rate of shear strain, or it is also what you can also name it as a velocity gradient. Fine. So if shear stress is proportional to velocity gradient, it will make this line. Okay, so this line states that shear stress is directly proportional to rate of shear strain. So all the fluids which follow this principle, these fluids are called as Newtonian fluids. Okay, so taking this point in the mind, and whatever the fluids, if the you can say if the fluid is not following this line, if the shear stress is not proportional, it could be great also, it could be lesser also, right? If the line is not proportional, those fluids are called as non-Newtonian fluids. Okay, there could be one more line here which is not proportional, and so there could be positive slope also, negative slope also, right? So these fluids are called as non-Newtonian fluids, right? So taking this point in mind, let us try to discuss these different types of fluids. So it has categorized fluids into 5 types: ideal fluid, real fluid, Newtonian fluids, non-Newtonian fluids, and ideal plastic fluids. So ideal fluids, I have discussed this in the first lecture also. If the fluid particle doesn't interact with each other, there is no collision, there are very less interaction between the fluid particles, those type of fluid particles do not have any losses because of because there are hardly any collisions, right? So if there is no collision between the fluid particles, that means there is no hindrance, there is no, you can say, obstruction in the fluid flow, right? So there will be no viscosity. So if the fluid particle have no viscosity in between them, so such type of fluid is called as ideal fluid. Okay, but it's not practically feasible to have zero viscosity. There is always some kind of loss whenever the fluid flow. So therefore, these type of fluids are not practically possible. They are only the imaginary fluid. Okay, so these are called as ideal fluids. Now the what could be the real fluid? Vice versa, opposite to the ideal fluid. If the fluid possesses some viscosity, those are called as real fluids. We have all the practical fluids are real fluids. Fine. So you name any fluid, all those fluids will come under real fluid. Now Newtonian fluid we have discussed. If the fluid follows the Newton's law of viscosity, that means in that case shear stress should be proportional to the rate of shear strain. So that means this kind of line is forming. So those fluids are called as Newtonian fluid. Okay, examples of the Newtonian fluid. It could be any example, like you can talk about water, you can talk about fuels. Okay, you can talk about fuels like diesel, petrol, glycerine. So all of these fluids are called as Newtonian fluids. Okay, because they flow readily with respect to according to the you can say Newton's law of viscosity. Now, what are non-Newtonian fluids? Non-Newtonian fluids are which in which the rate of shear stress is not shear stress is not directly proportional to the rate of shear strain. So it could be a positive slope or negative slope or positive slopes. Right? Such type of fluids are called as non-Newtonian fluids. Now, what could be the example? Try to think of a fluid which cannot easily move. Okay, like you might have tried to, you can say, take out ketchup from the bottle. If you take out ketchup from the bottle, it takes a lot of, you can say, effort to bring out the ketchup from the bottle. So that means the flow of ketchup is not readily as compared to the applied stress. You are applying forces to the ketchup bottle, and the fluid is very slowly coming out of the bottle. Fine. So such type of fluids are called as non-Newtonian fluids. Fine. And similarly, if I talk about plastic fluids, so plastic fluids, see, you can see that from the diagram also, this is plastic fluid. And at zero velocity gradient also, you need some kind of stress. Fine. That means even to flow, even to start the flow, you need a large amount of stress to make these fluid flow. You need initially a large amount of stress. Fine. So such type of fluids are called as plastic. But once the fluid start flowing, it will become proportional to the rate of shear strain. Fine. So such type of fluids are called as ideal plastic fluids. So one such example is, you can assume a condition in the morning whenever you go for brushing your teeth. What you try to do, you will try to push the toothpaste. Fine. Initially, just to you can say, just to bring out, just to squeeze out the toothpaste from the from the that cone. Okay, you apply some stress. Fine. So after applying a limiting value, after reaching a limiting value of stress from 0 to, let's say, 1 2 3 4 5, and after applying a limiting value, the paste will come out of the tube. And after that, once the paste comes out of the tube, it can readily flow outside. Okay, with the with the gradual amount of stress, shear stress. Fine. So such type of fluids are called as ideal plastic fluids. So I hope the discussion of different type of fluids is also covered. Okay, good luck.